It was a cold, quiet night in the city. The wind blew between the tall buildings, carrying dust and a strange silence. Most people had already gone home, but John was still walking, tired from work. He was a simple man, a mechanic who fixed old machines and lived alone. He didn't expect anything special to happen that night, but something was waiting in the dark. As he walked past an alley, he heard a soft sound. It was quiet, like someone crying. He stopped and listened, thinking it might be a cat or a lost child. Then he heard it again, a small, shaking voice. He turned and looked into the alley. It was dark, but his eyes caught something strange. A figure was sitting on the ground, knees to her chest, face hidden. She looked small, weak, and afraid. "Hey, are you okay?" John asked carefully. The figure looked up slowly, and John took a step back. Her eyes were glowing blue. Not like a flashlight, not like anything human. Her skin was pale, with a soft purple tint, and strange marks glowed on her arms. She looked like a child, maybe 10 or 12 years old. But not from Earth. She was an alien. John's heart beat faster, but he didn't run. She didn't look dangerous, she looked scared. "Please don't tell anyone," she said in a weak voice. "They'll take me away." John didn't know what to say. He looked around. The streets were empty. No one was watching. He took off his jacket and put it over her shoulders. "You're freezing," he said. "Come with me." "It's not safe here." She followed him quietly. Still shaking, at home, John gave her soup and a blanket. She sat on the couch like a lost kitten. Scared to move, he didn't ask too many questions. Not yet. He could see she was too tired. She kept glancing at the window, afraid someone would appear. "Who are you?" He finally asked. "My name is Zira," she said softly. I'm not from here." John nodded slowly, trying to stay calm. "You're not the first strange thing I've seen in this world," he said with a small smile. "But you are the first to knock on my life like this." She didn't smile back. "They were chasing me," she whispered. "I escaped, but they'll come. They always find me." "Who's they?" John asked. She looked down, eyes full of fear. "Bad people," she said. "They hurt others. They take children. They don't care about life. Only power." John felt anger rise in his chest. He didn't know where she came from or who those people were, but he knew pain when he saw it. Zira had suffered, and now she was alone. That night, John let her sleep in the small guest room. He sat near the window, watching the street, just in case. He didn't believe in aliens before, not really. But now one was sleeping under his roof, and the world felt different. He wondered what would happen next. Why had she come here? Why him? Far above the city, in the clouds, something moved. A dark shape, floating without sound, watched the streets below. Inside, glowing red eyes scanned the buildings, searching. It had found a trace, just a small signal, but enough. The girl had used a piece of alien tech to send a call. And now, others were listening too. John didn't know any of this yet. He just saw a broken soul who needed help. He didn't care where she was from or what trouble followed her. He only knew she shouldn't be alone. When he checked on her before going to sleep, he found her awake. She looked at him with tired, glowing eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "No one has ever helped me before." "You're safe here," John said. "I promise." But Zira shook her head slowly. "No," she said, "now that I'm here. You're not safe either." Then she looked at the window, her voice low and shaking. "They're coming," she whispered. "They'll take me back. Please don't let them find me." John stood there, frozen as a chill ran down his spine. Outside, the wind howled louder, as if warning him, and above the clouds, something began to descend. The night was far from over. Morning came. But the air in John's house felt heavy. The light outside was calm. But something unseen moved in the distance. John sat at the kitchen table. Watching the hallway, he heard soft footsteps. And then Zira entered slowly. She looked cleaner, warmer. But her glowing blue eyes still held fear. She wore an old hoodie he gave her. The sleeves too long for her small arms, still. Her alien skin made the fabric glow slightly. She looked like a ghost trying to hide in human clothes. "Sleep okay?" John asked, trying to sound normal. She nodded, but said nothing. He gave her toast and tea, and they sat in silence for a while. Then she looked up and whispered, "Why did you help me?" John took a breath, then shrugged. "Because you needed it," he said. And because no one else would, she stared at him for a moment, like she was trying to understand something deeper. Then, slowly, she pulled up the sleeve of her hoodie. John's eyes widened. Her arm was thin, pale violet in color, and covered in glowing marks. They weren't tattoos. They looked like they were part of her skin, moving softly like light underwater. The patterns pulsed slowly, almost like a heartbeat. "What is that?" he asked, leaning closer. Zira looked down at her arm, her voice quiet. "They're memories," she said. "Stories written in my skin. Each mark tells where I've been. And what I've lost, John didn't understand fully. But he listened. She moved her finger across one symbol, and a soft hum filled the air. The room grew colder, and for a second, John saw something strange, a vision like a memory not his own. He saw a great silver ship flying through stars. Zira standing beside tall beings with soft glowing robes. Then fire, screaming. And darkness. John pulled back, breathless. "What was that?" he asked. Zira looked sad. "That was my home," she said. Before they came, she told him about a group called the Dravari, dark aliens with red armor and sharp eyes. They didn't care for peace, only control. Zira's people tried to stop them, but failed. She was taken along with others, but she escaped. Now she was hiding on Earth, the only place the Dravari couldn't reach easily. Until now, John felt something twist inside him. He had only wanted to help a lost girl. Now he was part of something much bigger. "If they come here," he said slowly, "what do they want from you?" Zira didn't answer at first. Then she whispered, "They want to erase me, 'cause I'm the last of something important, if I live. I'm a danger to them." Before he could ask more, something strange happened. The TV on the wall, an old one he barely used, suddenly turned on by itself. Static filled the screen. Then alien symbols began to appear. Glowing in blue, Zira stood up fast, staring at it. "It's me," she said. "I can't stop it sometimes." John's jaw dropped. "You're doing that?" he asked. She nodded, scared. "I was trained to speak to machines." With thought, John walked slowly to the TV and turned it off. "You've got powers," he said. "And that means others will come for them." She looked down. Ashamed, "I didn't want to use them," she said. "But they're part of me." Outside, a black car drove slowly past the house. Two men in dark suits looked toward the window, then kept driving. John didn't see them, but Zira did. She froze, her eyes wide. "They're here," she whispered. They followed my trail. John moved quickly, locking the doors and pulling the curtains. His heart raced, but his mind was sharp. "Okay," he said. "We'll make a plan. I know this town. I know where to hide." Zira looked unsure. "You could leave me," she said. "They won't hurt you." John shook his head. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "And I don't run from bullies." He took her to the garage, where he kept old tools and machines. There was a secret spot behind the shelves. A small room with thick walls. Zira sat inside, hugging her knees, while John checked outside with a flashlight. He didn't see anyone, but the air felt wrong too still. Too silent, back inside, he found her drawing something in the dust with her finger. A star map, strange and beautiful. "These are the places I've been," she said softly. "And this? This is where I'm from." John looked at the tiny dot far from everything else. "That's you?" he asked. She nodded. "It was called Virelia. Now it's just dust." The room fell quiet again, but outside, down the street, the black car stopped once more. One of the men stepped out. Holding a strange device, it beeped softly, pointing toward John's house back in the garage. Zira clutched her glowing arm, her voice shaking. "They know I'm here," she whispered. "They're getting closer." John stood by her side, eyes hard. "Let them come," he said. "We'll be ready." Above them, unseen by human eyes, a second ship appeared in the sky, but this one didn't come to hurt. It came because it heard Zara's silent call, and it was not the only one listening. The town woke to a thin, gray morning, but the calm was only skin deep. John closed his garage door and felt the weight of the night still on his shoulders. He had not slept well, his mind full of Zara's glowing marks and the strange map she had drawn. He kept thinking about the black car that had driven by twice, and about the men who watched from inside it. His hands trembled as he tightened a bolt on an old engine. But his head was far away, worrying about the girl hiding in his house. Zira stayed in the secret room behind the shelves. Whispering to herself and drawing more star lines in the dust, she said little. But when she spoke, her words were sharp and quick, like broken glass. "Hunters will not stop until they find the mark," she said. Tracing a pattern on the floor with her finger, "They take memories. They take names. They break you." By noon, one of the hunters came to the shop, wearing a plain coat and an easy smile that had no warmth. He asked about old parts and old radios, looking at John with eyes that never smiled. John answered slowly, keeping his voice steady, pretending he did not see fear behind those eyes. The man left with a card that had nothing written on it, and that small card made John's skin crawl. He walked out to the alley afterward and saw the shape of the black car at the corner. Engine idling, men inside watching the street like predators. John did not tell Zira at first, because he did not want to scare her more than she already was. But secrets have small legs and quick feet, and the truth moved like a river under the city. Soon to swell and burst, that evening the hunters grew bolder. Sending two men with loud steps to his door, Zero felt them before John did, because she could feel the change in the air. The small shift of other minds moving in a pattern she knew too well. She touched the metal of an old wrench, and the air around it shimmered. The wrench rose an inch and then 2 inches, hovering as if the room had gravity for her alone. John walked in and froze to see the wrench floating there, turning slowly in the dim light, tiny sparks dancing on its edge. His first thought was fear, his second was wonder, and his third was fierce protectiveness. Because the miracle and the danger stood together in his small garage. "How did you do that?" John whispered, but Zira only looked at him with eyes that were older than her face, and said, "I did not want to, but it is part of me." The men outside lost patience, hammering loudly on the door like they wanted the house to open for them. John moved the wrench back down with a gentle thought, surprising himself at the calm that came with action. He opened the door a crack and let them speak, pretending he was alone and oblivious, while listening with every ear. They asked simple questions at first, then sharper ones, like they were trying to cut a truth from his words. "Have you seen anyone unusual?" One asked, his voice cold and slow. "Any children wandering? Anyone asking for help?" John lied easily, saying no, but inside his chest, his heart hammered like a drum, and every lie felt like a thin rope ready to snap. When they left, he slammed the door and leaned against it for a long time, breathing like a man who had run a long way without moving. Zira curled on the floor like a small wounded animal and told John more of her story in pieces. each piece a painful shard. She spoke of capture rooms where lights cut memories into fine dust, of metal hands that touched the mind and took names like coins, and of a red-armored captain who laughed at tears. John held her hand, feeling the pale warmth of her skin, and he promised himself that he would not let those men come and find her. Not while he lived. He bought new locks and ancient radios that could not be tracked. He moved boxes and created paths through his shop that led to hidden corners where two people could hide and breathe. At night, he sat awake with a flashlight and a tool in his lap, listening for the sound of wheels or distant engines, always ready to wake and run. Even so, there was a new sound in the sky sometimes, a low thrumming that made the windows hum, and Zero would close her eyes and whisper, "They are close." One night the hunters tried to use people in the market, asking questions like a net spread wide, hoping someone would tangle in it and give them Zera's name. A child in a red cap saw Zera at the bakery and asked a question, and for a moment the world held its breath. But Zera smiled and gave the child a small wrapped pastry, and the net fell away, lost and empty. Not all nets fail, though. And in the shadows a trap was being set that neither John nor Zera could yet see. A hunter learned John's name, and names have weight, and he whispered it into a dark phone, and the phone carried the name into places where men with red armor listen and obey. John felt the air change the same night, and he knew the hunters were close enough to smell the fear on his skin. He tightened his grip on a wrench and looked at Zera with a hard, steady look, and she nodded back, her eyes small stars burning, ready to fight or run or do whatever was needed to survive. Outside, the city slept, unaware that two small lives were the center of changing tides. And above them, in the cold sky, a dark ship moved into place. Waiting for the right moment to strike asterisk, the sun had barely touched the rooftops when John felt that something wasn't right. He stood by the window watching a dark car parked across the street. The engine was off, but it hadn't moved in hours. Inside the garage, Zera sat quietly, eyes glowing faintly, arms wrapped around her knees. She had been tense since morning, her skin flashing tiny patterns every few seconds. That only happened when danger was close. And now it was pulsing fast, like a warning siren made of light. "They're near," she whispered, not looking up. John tightened his grip on the old radio he held. He had hoped for more time to understand what Zera really was, or where she was from, but time, it seemed, had run out. A loud knock rattled the door. Not like before. This was urgent, rough, and clear. John didn't answer, didn't move. He turned off the lights, stepped back into the shadows, and motioned to Zera. She nodded, already moving toward the back exit hidden behind the tool shelves. Another knock, harder this time, followed by a voice, "Open the door, Mr. John. We need to ask you some more questions." It wasn't a request. Zera pressed her hand against the metal door at the back, and it clicked softly open without a key. John stared, amazed again, but there was no time to speak. He followed her out into the narrow alley, the sound of boots now echoing behind them. The alley was cold and damp, the smell of rust and oil thick in the air. Zera moved fast for someone so small. Her bare feet quiet on the concrete, John kept close, leading her through the back streets of the city he knew well. Shadows stretched long between buildings, and every corner felt like a trap somewhere above. The black ship floated unseen, tracking energy, waiting for the hunters to force Zera into the open. They reached a junkyard on the far side of town. John's old friend used to own it. Now it was empty, full of broken cars and forgotten parts. But Zera's eyes lit up when she saw something in the middle. Half buried under scrap, it was a smooth metal curve, too shiny, too perfect to be human. She ran to it and brushed the dust away. revealing a small alien pod cracked open like an egg. "This is part of my ship," she said. Breathless, I crashed nearby. Weeks ago, I was hiding. But they kept searching. John stepped closer. Looking inside, the pod was dead, its lights out, its systems fried. But Zira reached in and pulled out a small silver disc, no larger than a coin. She placed it on her palm, and it lit up with blue rings that floated in the air. Spinning slowly, "It's a beacon," she whispered. "But only for my people. I hope." She pressed the center of the disc, and a quiet hum filled the yard. John looked up at the sky, uneasy. "Are you sure no one else can hear that?" Zero didn't answer right away, and that silence said more than words ever could. They didn't wait, they kept moving. The beacon would take time to reach anyone if it even worked. Zira's strength was fading, and John knew they needed a place to hide. Not just for an hour, but for the night. They found an old train station, half abandoned, covered in graffiti, with broken lights and empty halls. John guided Zero through a side door and into a storage room filled with dust and old vending machines. She collapsed onto a blanket he laid out. Her breathing slow and shaky, he knelt beside her. Placing his jacket over her shoulders, "You did good," he said softly. "Just rest." Zira opened her eyes and said, "You should have left me." "You still can." John shook his head. "I've never left someone who needed help," he said. "Not starting now." Outside, the hunters were spreading out across the city. Cameras were being tapped, signals tracked, people questioned. The men in black were no longer pretending to be polite. They were looking for something, and they were close. One of them scanned the junkyard hours later, finding the broken pod and the faint trace of alien tech. "The signal came from here," he said into a device. "She's nearby, back at the station." Zira stirred in her sleep, her skin glowing brighter. John watched as the silver disc beside her pulsed once. Then again, something had heard it, far above the earth. Something that moved fast through stars and didn't belong to the hunters. Help might be coming, but would it arrive in time? John leaned back against the cold wall, holding a wrench in one hand and a flashlight in the other. He was tired, scared, but more determined than ever. He looked at Zira and thought about how strange it was that one small alien girl had become the center of his entire world, and he had a feeling things were only going to get stranger. Far above, in the silence between stars, a distant ship changed course. Its lights turned toward Earth. The call had been heard. Asterisk, the night was cold and quiet, but in the sky, something had changed. Stars blinked in patterns only Zero could read, and one of them was moving. Fast, far above Earth, beyond human eyes. A ship shaped like a silver flame slid through the dark. It didn't send messages, didn't blink lights, it only came. Silent and steady, it had heard the beacon. And it knew what it meant. Zero was alive. In the train station below, John didn't know about the ship yet. He only knew that Zero was getting weaker. She hadn't eaten in hours, and the glowing marks on her arms were fading. She looked smaller now, curled under his jacket. Eyes barely open, he sat beside her, gripping a rusty wrench, heart pounding every time he heard footsteps outside. Then something strange happened. The silver disc beside her started floating again. Spinning slowly in the air, a soft hum filled the room. Almost like music, but not human music. Zero opened her eyes and smiled weakly. "They're here," she whispered. "One of my people." "They found me." John stood up quickly, unsure if this was good or bad. "Can we trust them?" he asked. Zero nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "He's old. Strong. One of the last free ones." Outside, the wind shifted, and a beam of soft white light touched the ground in the alley behind the station. The light bent, twisted, and formed a tall figure, armored and silent. It was not like the hunters. This one had no cold eyes or sharp tools. Instead, the figure carried a staff that glowed gently and moved with the weight of centuries. John stepped outside with Zira in his arms, ready to fight, ready to run. But the tall being raised one hand and spoke in a deep, calm voice. "I am Kelter of the skyline," he said. "And I have come for the child." Zira stirred in John's arms and reached out. "Kale," she said softly, "you found me." The tall alien stepped closer, kneeling down to see her face. "You carry the light of the old blood," he said. "They said you were gone. But the light never lies." John lowered her gently, watching as Kale placed his hand above her chest. A warm glow passed between them, and Zira's breathing grew steady again. The marks on her skin lit up once more, bright and alive. "I thought I was alone," she said, her eyes full of tears. Kale shook his head. "Not alone, just hidden. And now the galaxy will know you survived." John stepped back, unsure where he stood in all this. He had saved her, fed her, protected her, but now she was with her people again. Did that mean she would leave? Kale turned to him and spoke in clear, slow English. "You are the one who kept her safe," he said, "a human with no reason to help." "But you did," John shrugged, looking down. "She was scared and alone," he said. "I couldn't just leave her." Kale studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "There are a few like you left," he said. "Even among our kind." Zira sat up slowly, strength returning with every breath. "She saved me too," she said, pointing at John. "He gave me hope." Kale placed his hand on John's shoulder. "The hunters will come faster now," he warned. "They will see the beacon's light, and they will bring war." John's jaw tightened. "Then we fight," he said. "Or we run again." "No," Kale said firmly. "We do not run. We rise." He opened a small panel on his arm, and a hologram lit the air. It showed the hunters ship black and sharp already descending toward Earth. "They are close," Kale said, "but they do not know we are ready." Zira stood up fully now, her eyes glowing brighter than ever before. She looked stronger, taller, and something inside her had changed. "I remember now," she said, "what they were afraid of." John looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" he asked. She raised her hand, and the silver disc flew into her palm. "They erased my memory before," she said, "but your kindness helped me remember." Kale's eyes widened. "She is not just a child," he said slowly. "She is a key, the last heir of the star line. The only one who can unlock the gateway." John didn't know what that meant, but he understood one thing. The hunters wanted her gone, not because she was weak, but because she was powerful. And now she remembered who she was. "Come," Kale said. "We must leave this place." But Zira turned to John, her voice soft. "He helped me when I was nothing. He should come with us." Kale looked at John for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If he wishes it, he will be honored among us." John looked at Earth, at the city where he had spent his whole life. Then he looked at the stars shining in Zira's eyes. "I'm in," he said. "Let's finish what we started above them." The hunter ship finally broke through the clouds. But this time, they would not be chasing prey. They would be walking into a storm they never expected. Asterisk, the clouds above the city broke apart with a roar. A black ship descended slowly from the sky, silent but terrifying. Its smooth surface shimmered with red lights, and its engines didn't make a sound, only a pressure. A deep, heavy feeling that pressed into every wall, every bone. People on the streets looked up and froze, unsure if what they saw was real, but Zira knew it was real. And so did John. The hunters had come inside the old train station. The air grew thick. Zira stood by the window, glowing brighter than ever before. Her hair moved slightly, even though there was no wind. Kale stood behind her, his tall form like a living statue of silver and light. John checked the tools and makeshift weapons he had gathered. A wrench, a metal rod, and a strange energy blade Kale had given him. He wasn't trained for this, but he had come too far to turn away now. "They know I'm awake," Zira said quietly. "They know I remember who I am," Kale nodded. Gripping his staff tightly, "They will try to take you," he said, "or destroy everything to stop you." John looked at the two of them and asked, "What exactly do they want with her?" Kale answered, without turning his head, "She is the last of the star line. The only one who can unlock the gate between galaxies if she opens it. Their rule ends." Suddenly, the ground shook as the hunter ship landed nearby. Its landing ramp opened with a hiss, and red-armored figures marched out in rows. They carried weapons that glowed like molten fire, and their faces were covered in dark helmets. At the front of the group stood a taller figure, its armor deeper red, eyes glowing with cruelty. Zira gasped, stepping back. "That's him," she whispered. "The one who erased my mind." Commander Vrek, Kale raised his staff. His voice deep and calm. "John, you protect Zira. No matter what happens." John nodded, fear tight in his chest, but his hands steady. Zira looked at him, her eyes full of light and sadness. "If they catch me, they'll break the universe," she said. "Then we won't let them catch you," John replied. The walls around them exploded inward as the hunters stormed the station. Kale moved first, his staff glowing blue as it struck the ground. Sending out a shockwave, the first line of hunters flew backward. Crashing into metal beams, John pulled Zira behind a pile of crates, using the energy blade to block incoming blasts. He had never fought like this before, but something in him had changed. He wasn't just a mechanic, now he was part of something bigger. Kale fought like a legend, every movement precise and powerful. But there were too many enemies, and even he began to slow. Zira stepped forward, her arms lifted, glowing marks flashing across her skin like fire. She closed her eyes and whispered something in her language. The ground shook, and a beam of white light burst from her chest. Blinding everyone, the hunters screamed and staggered. Their weapons shorting out, Commander Vrek shouted in anger and charged through the chaos. He moved fast, knocking Kale aside with a crushing blow. Zira tried to run, but Vrek caught her wrist. Lifting her into the air, "You were never meant to survive," he growled. "You are a threat to everything." Before he could strike, John tackled him from the side. The energy blade cut deep into Vrek's shoulder, forcing him to drop Zira. Vrek turned and slammed John into the wall. Hard, John collapsed. Coughing blood on his lips, Zira screamed. Falling beside him, "Please, don't leave me," she said, tears glowing on her cheeks. Kale dragged himself up and threw his staff, hitting Vrek square in the chest. The commander stumbled, but it was Zira who stood next, her body now surrounded by a halo of light. She looked down at John, her voice shaking. "You saved me," she said. "Now I'll save you." She lifted her hands and called the light again. But this time, it wasn't just memory or power, it was truth. The truth of who she was, the truth of her people, the truth of what the hunters had done. That truth exploded from her like a storm, filling the station, cracking the air. The hunters screamed and vanished in a wave of white fire. Their weapons melted. Their ship powered down and collapsed like a dying machine. When the light faded, only Kale, John, and Zira remained. John lay still, his breathing shallow. Zira dropped beside him. Placing her hand on his chest, "Stay," she whispered. "I need you." Kale stepped forward and placed his hand over hers. "We can save him," he said. "But it must be now." Light flowed from them into John, slow and warm like sunrise. And finally, his eyes opened, weak but alive. Zira smiled through her tears and whispered, You came for me, and I came back for you, above them. The clouds began to part, not from ships, but from the light. The city was safe for now, but their journey was not over. The battle was over, but the world around them still trembled. Smoke drifted through the broken roof of the train station. Light from the rising sun painting everything gold. John lay on the floor, weak but alive. Zero sat beside him, holding his hand gently, her eyes still glowing softly. Kale stood near the entrance, watching the horizon, alert for any signs of more danger. But for the first time in many nights, the silence was peaceful. Zira's powers had driven the hunters away. Their ship had collapsed into dust. And Commander Vrek was gone. The danger had passed. But the cost still lingered. John sat up slowly, groaning. Touching the bandage on his side, "You okay?" he asked her, voice rough. Zira nodded. Her voice soft. "I am now," she said, "because you stayed outside." The people of the city were waking to news and rumors. Some said it was a meteor strike. Others blamed a government experiment. But none could explain the strange lights or the thunder without sound. Kale knew Earth would soon become curious. And curiosity would lead to questions. "We must leave," he said. Before the humans come looking, Zira helped John stand. And they walked together toward the edge of the broken platform. High above them, hidden by a cloak of light, Kale's ship hovered silently. It was shaped like a crescent moon, smooth and glowing faint blue. A ramp lowered gently as they approached. Humming with energy that felt alive, John paused at the base of the ramp, looking back at the world he had always known. The city skyline, the junkyards, his old workshop hall seemed so small now. "Are you sure I can go with you?" he asked, doubt flickering in his eyes. Zero took his hand again, tighter this time. "I'm only sure of one thing," she said. "You believed in me when I had nothing. Now I want to build something new with you." Kale waited inside, silent and patient, when they stepped into the ship. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. The interior was unlike anything John had ever seen. Walls shimmered with moving lights, and the air carried a soft music he couldn't fully hear. It felt like walking into a dream, but it was real. The ship lifted gently into the sky, flying through the clouds and out into the stars. Earth faded behind them, a small blue sphere wrapped in light. John watched from the window, heart full of wonder and fear. Zira stood beside him, glowing softly, her face calm. She was no longer the frightened girl crying in the alley. She was something more now, stronger, wiser, full of purpose. Kale guided the ship through space until they reached a strange blue gate surrounded by stars. It pulsed gently, as if waiting for someone. "This," Kale said, "is the gate only Zero can open. It leads to the lost worlds, the places we thought were gone forever." Zira stepped forward, lifting the silver disc in her hand. She whispered a few words in her language, and the gate responded. A beam of light connected the disc to the stars. And slowly, the gate opened. Behind it was a galaxy of color, full of strange planets and glowing trails of energy. Zira looked back at John, smiling with tears in her eyes. "My people. They're waiting on the other side," she said. "But I want you there with me." John nodded slowly, his voice soft. "Let's see what's out there together." The ship crossed through the gate, and in an instant, everything changed. They entered a space full of life. Ships like birds flying in formation, cities floating between planets. Zero pointed toward a large world with rings of silver and blue. "That's the new home," she said, "for my people. And for you, if you choose it." John took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift from his shoulders. He had once been a lonely mechanic, fixing broken things in silence. Now he was part of something that reached across the stars. And he was with someone who had trusted him with her life. The ship landed on a glowing platform surrounded by alien beings. They bowed to Zira and looked at John with curiosity. But not fear. Kale stepped forward and spoke clearly. This human stood against the hunters. He risked his life for one of us from this day forward. He is one of us. Cheers rose from the crowd. Soft and musical, Zira smiled, taking John's hand again. You didn't just save me, she said. You changed everything. John looked at her. Then at the stars above, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel small. He felt like he belonged.